All right, we're back with another Q&A video. I hope all of you enjoyed your day, and I thank those of you for posting your questions. Let's get started. We'll start off with a question that I've answered several times, so here it is for the last time. Can a captain order a soldier from a different crew to do something? The short answer is yes, but that really depends on what's being asked of him. If you go by protocol, he should see if it's okay with the guy's captain first. For one, out of courtesy, but more so out of respect. Was there still any Varios in the Lucchese family during your time? I only met one Vario in a Long Island restaurant, and I assumed he was a Lucchese associate. But other than him, I really don't know of any others. After watching and thinking about your videos on flashy, loud, troublesome mob associates, such as Tuccio, why do guys like this even get into that position in the first place? Since associates, as you mentioned, are the biggest problem causes, could you please shed some light on this? Well, in a nutshell, this takes place because the pickings are slim. Wannabes like Peter Pan and people like him, the mob can use. It's not like years ago where you had entire neighborhoods of young Italians to choose or groom. What do you think about some of the suspected mob hits outside of New York? The 2020 Bobby English Jr. murder and the 2019 Rhode Island murder of a drive-in enforcer of the New England mob. I'm sure there are hits that take place outside of New York. The young kid you mentioned was allegedly killed by the Chicago outfit. And I'm honestly not knowledgeable on what's going on in Chicago or New England for that matter. Is prison a way of life for the Italian mafia like it is in the United States? I think it's common knowledge, or should be expected, whether you're a member of the mafia anywhere in the world, that prison is one of the downfalls. If Matty Madonna received compassionate release, would he immediately be shelved? I don't necessarily think he would be shelved. Matty's very old, so he may just be inactive. Did you ever eat at Rayo's? How mobbed up is it today? I've eaten there plenty of times, and it's a restaurant where members of the mob go to eat and drink to this very day. What crew was Anthony Curly Russo a captain of when he was promoted, and who took over after he was demoted? I believe I met him at a wake, and he wasn't introduced to me as a captain, so I have no idea. Was a guy having a wife and a gomara a normal thing, or was it just something a little exaggerated for TV? And have you heard of any bad reactions of a wife finding out about it? I don't know about TV, but a lot of guys in that life have gomaras, and some don't. And I have heard stories about wives who caught their husbands, but I'm not going to speak about it. Do you believe Al Diaco was really going to be hit at the Kimberly Hotel, as he asserted? Why would the Lucchese's involve their leadership in a hit with a firearm and in a public place like that? Yes, Diaco was going to be hit. At that time, he was a high-ranking member, and also someone who was involved in several hits, so they weren't going to rock him to sleep so easily, or get him to meet with lower-ranking members who could possibly pull a hit off. The Kimberly was associated to Lucchese's, so they did have an advantage there. You have told stories about guys not being able to call you a liar, either in a meeting or at a sit-down, even when they may say things that implied you might be either lying or dishonest, and couldn't call you a liar. So I'm wondering why that is. Why is there so much respect or deference in the life for that? It seems strange, given that otherwise there is so much treachery or betrayal in the mob, but yet you can't just call a guy a liar. I do get what you're trying to say. Guys in that life can't call one another a liar, but at the same time, pull treacherous moves on one another. Nevertheless, it's a so-called technicality to call a guy a liar, especially in a sit-down. I guess you're supposed to be considered a man of honor, and men of honor don't lie. So to suggest it is insulting Cosa Nostra. It's all bullshit, and they all lie, like the finest Persian rugs. Is the Rizzutos still a crew of the Bananos, or are they independent of New York and their own crime family? I don't believe they've been a faction of the Bonanno family and haven't since the Bonanos killed George from Canada, Shasha, at which time the Rizzutos began distancing themselves and became more of an independent family. Okay, let me take a breath. This next viewer posted 6 questions, and when I messaged him back, he removed 2. Here we go. In the past, you talked about a sit down with Joey Cupcakes where you felt your life was threatened. If you had been forced to take out Cupcakes and his friend, what would the ramifications have been aside from prison? I don't believe I've ever said I felt like my life was threatened. It was a sketchy situation. I definitely was concerned, but stood my ground. If things went sideways, I was the one that was outnumbered, and you never bring a knife to a gunfight, which is what I did. So I think the decision would not have been in my favor. You discussed in numerous videos that certain people chose not to be in Big John's crew, transferring to others. Did Joe Cafe take in any of said people? And if so, who? I have no idea. All I know is numerous people didn't want to report to Big John. Who was running the crew that originally belonged to Joe DiNapoli? Was it one of the Bronx captains that you already met? During my time, Joe was the consigliere. What crew he had was definitely before my time, so I have no idea who took it over or if it was anyone I met. And for his last inquiry, who was the oldest mobster that you ever met? I'm really not sure. A few guys were in their 80s, but I don't know who was the oldest. If you haven't liked this video yet, please take the time now and give it a like, as it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Anyone who'd like to show their appreciation for videos like this, or more importantly, help me to continue making them, you can donate with the Super Thanks icon down below or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. Let me quickly mention my blog, also called Sit Down News, especially for those of you who still enjoy reading. The site can be found at sitdownnews.com and is a paid subscription. And for the final question, did you ever meet Gambino member Vinny Gotti during your time? How was he viewed on the street? I never met Vinny as a member. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was shelved, and I never heard anyone mention him. However, I know Vinny since I was a baby, literally. He grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, with both my parents, and at one time was a close friend of my father. And I may or may not do a video on him.